To get started, what does an investigation of this scale entail?
You're going to have to speak a little louder there, Phil. Sorry.
What does an investigation of this scale entail?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is that um, you have to learn the background of the subject. They've spoke about how he was in the army at one time in the reserves, and you have to figure out, what he can do and can't do, and you should glean some of that through interviews with associates, friends, family members, anybody that's available. And the next thing you need to consider, of course, is what kind of how many people do you have to assist in this? And from what I've seen, and I've been following the story, from what I've seen and heard, this has become a large scale operation, considering the magnitude of what Mr. Brown did in shooting four other people, which is Montana. We don't have many things like that going on in this state, as you well know.
How does the process work, and how does the FBI coordinate with other law enforcement agencies?
Well, what will usually happen is that the locals, this is a local matter, but now that he's fled, they can always obtain a federal UFAP award. That's an unlawful flight to avoid prosecution. So the local law enforcement, be it the local PD or the sheriff's office or maybe even the state police, they will put out a broadcast to gather assistance. And so the magnitude of this is that you get as many people as you think is necessary. And if he has fled to the Georgetown area and over there by the lake, then now we're talking about, some rough country.
What type of specialized FBI teams are typically involved in large coordinated manhunts like this one, and what are their respective roles?
Well, their role is to assist. So what they will do is you gather around as the people that you have available, and you have to set up teams. They'll have a map, and they'll assign certain sections or sectors to the teams, and they're going to have to begin a grid search. And what they want to use is every available resource, be it dogs, horses, people on foot, helicopters. And the FBI has some of these things that they can assist with. So whatever the call is, um, when the call goes out, whatever they can provide. And the FBI has a lot of resources at its disposal. We have a lot of agents here in Montana. They all report to Salt Lake City Division. Montana does not have what we call a head office here. So we have resident agencies, and the agents, they're all assigned as per the supervisors can allow them to go out based upon other things going on.
How is evidence such as the abandoned truck and camping gear processed and used to shape an ongoing investigation?
Well, they usually assign what we call an evidence response team, and that's the FBI. That's what we call it, an evidence response team. And those agents are tasked solely with gathering evidence, and that evidence has to be carefully handled. They separate it. It's put in whatever kind of container that is required for that particular evidence. So those agents are assigned to gather and process, and then it's sent off either to the state lab or sometimes it goes back to the FBI laboratory for processing.
And I don't know if like in your career or anything, what does camping gear like does that specifically impact how teams handle the investigation? Like are they thinking like for search efforts?
Well, when you have a case like this where somebody's fled what I would call into the wilderness, into the mountains, everybody comes prepared. They're prepared to sleep in their own sleeping bags. They're prepared to face the elements. Um, Something favorable for this particular investigation. It's not the middle of winter, and it's a lot easier to well just to live there, and everything gets provided. You have support people bring in food and water, and communication, of course, is very important. And if they're in the mountains, sometimes communication can become a problem. But communication, no matter how much you plan, something's going to go wrong. And you have to plan for what's going to go wrong. And everybody needs to know how to react.
Are there specialized techniques used in mountainous areas that differ from investigations in urban areas?
Well, they will probably, I'm guessing, I haven't heard that yet or seen that yet, but helicopters and airplanes and, some of those uh, aircraft are equipped with what we call the heat-seeking um, options, if you will, where they can detect movement. But of course, in the wilderness, you're going to have other animals that will show a heat reflection as much as a human being. So this is like finding the needle in the haystack, but if you do it in an organized manner with grid searches, that's where everybody is assigned a certain area, and you need to comb that very thoroughly. And what you're looking for, of course, is evidence, signs of somebody being in that area. And in the Old West, of course, we called it tracking. So they've got people that know how to track. And again, I haven't seen that yet, but I presume they're going to be using some dogs.
So, how does the FBI determine what areas to search during an investigation?
How does the FBI determine what, sir?
What areas to search, like where they're looking during an investigation?
Well, they're going to be using maps where they can, of course, look at the terrain. And the terrain will help you because you have deer paths out there. You have paths where the animals go. And you're looking at terrain, and somebody who's on the run, he's going to try to make it as easy as possible for himself. Rather than go straight up the hill, of course, he's going to, use what we call the switchback pattern. And switchbacks, of course, in Montana are everywhere on the mountainsides. And most of those are deer trails. So you look at the terrain, you look at the trails, you have maps. We've got the photography available, of course, from the aircraft, and that's how you track somebody. The fact that this gentleman, Mr. Brown, discarded all of his clothing, I found that quite unusual. So right away, the dogs have a way to, they have something there to pick up the scent, which was right on the spot from when the shooting occurred.
So, you mentioned the clothes. Do you have any idea? I mean, he has a military background. Do you have any idea why he might have done that?
I have no idea. And again, from everything I've heard and saw on TV already, because have been following this a little bit, I don't know that Mr. Brown is in full control of his senses. It sounds like that he has probably some sort of emotional problem. I hate to use the word mental, but there's something going on with him where he's not thinking straight. And the fact that he lived right next door to the Owl Bar and he knew these people, uh, we still don't know what triggered it. Um, what caused him to shoot four people.
So, how does the FBI balance the need to apprehend the suspect with ensuring the safety of law enforcement and local residents?
Well, everybody that's out there on the ground, but whether it's the FBI or the local law enforcement, the state, uh, there are a lot of people out there right now looking for Mr. Brown, and everybody's concerned with their safety. So everybody's watching everybody else's back. And again, I have not heard that the FBI is running this operation. We're assisting. So when you assist, you follow directions from whoever's in charge. And if I yesterday I saw the Attorney General on site, and then we've heard comments from Governor Gianforte. So there's a lot of interest in this case. And again, four people, that have met their death at the hands of Mr. Brown. This is not a usual happening here in Montana. As you well know, a lot of Montanans have uh, pistols, sidearms, if you will, rifles, shotguns. So everybody respects the fact that everybody is fairly prepared to respond to something if their life is in danger. I don't know what happened inside the Owl Bar, but something triggered Mr. Brown, and whatever caused him to shoot four people, it's horrible. And the fact that he was right there, he was local, there's something going on with Mr. Brown, and I don't know what we'll ever find out on this, even when he's caught.
In the event in the event of like a standoff, or if they find him, what's that negotiation and how's that communication between the suspect and local law enforcement work?
Well, there should be somebody there that what we call it, that's a negotiator. They'll be on site. There's negotiators, local, state, and of course with the FBI. So the first thing you need to do is establish communication. And once you've established communication, then it's the negotiator's job to try to connect with the subject, get him to trust the negotiator, and then hopefully you can what we call talk him down. That means to get him to be calm, to gain his confidence, if you will, and hopefully this will end in a more peaceful fashion than the way it started. But the negotiator, that's his job. And again, you have to establish communication. So depending on where they possibly corner him or find him, hopefully the process begins to get him to cooperate and end this in a peaceful manner. And then, of course, Mr. Brown will have his day in court.
Would you say the suspect's military background influences the way the FBI and other law enforcement agencies are handling the search?
Well, they're aware that he, first of all, has used his sidearm, his pistol, to shoot four people. So again, we don't know what happened inside that owl bar, inside the owl bar. But the fact that he's already shown this propensity for violence, he's going to be treated as armed and dangerous. So they'll proceed as such. If they do find him and he's cornered or he's spotted and he starts shooting at law enforcement, well, law enforcement, everybody's trained to defend themselves and other people. So again, hopefully Mr. Brown will surrender peacefully. But if he we don't know what's going through his mind. And I'm sure you've heard the term suicide by cop. There's people out there who will take a weapon that has no live ammunition, it's empty, and they'll try the when are confronted by the police, law enforcement, they'll make the motion where they're going to try to start shooting people, where they then hope that they are killed because they don't want to live for whatever reason. There's already been comments made where it's possible Mr. Brown will never be found because he may commit suicide. And if he's stuck in some place in the wilderness, who knows if or when his body would ever be discovered or recovered.
During your time at the FBI, did you ever experience a similar type of search or manhunt?
Yes, I did. Um, I did not grow up here in Montana. I've been trying to move here my whole life. I was actually assigned the end of my career in Detroit, Michigan. And Detroit is a FBI headquarters city. We covered the whole state of Michigan, including the Upper Peninsula. So on more than one occasion, I was involved in operations where we needed to conduct manhunts, if you will. Northern Michigan is wilderness, it's forests, and the Upper Peninsula is what I would call quite desolate. About the only thing separating Upper Michigan and the Upper Peninsula is they don't have the mountains, of course, that we have here in Montana.
So, just for some background, can you tell me a little bit about your career in the FBI?
Well, I was a captain in the Marine Corps. I had a regular commission. I came back from Vietnam and I was uh, designated the provost marshal at a Marine air station in Beaufort, South Carolina. And I was there for 3.5 years where I was recruited by the FBI. So my career started in 1976. My first assignment was Miami, Florida. Miami, Florida office back in the mid 70s was not a very large office. So I was assigned there for almost 3 years. I was then transferred to Philadelphia. And I worked in Philadelphia for about 2.5 years, almost 3 years. I lived in New Jersey, right across the river there. But so I was assigned to Philadelphia. And during that time, I was appointed as what we call a relief supervisor. I actually started that in Miami. A relief supervisor is somebody who gets some training, and when the supervisor of the squad is absent, maybe on vacation or something, then a relief supervisor takes over the daily operation of that squad. So I did that at the end of my time in Miami. I did it my whole time in Philadelphia. While I was in Philadelphia, I was then appointed what they call the night supervisor, which means I came in at 4 p.m. and worked until midnight. And when everybody went home, I was there to handle everything that came in during the evening or during the night. During that time, then I was appointed what they call a field counselor. I went down to the FBI, back to the FBI Academy, and I took a new agent class through the academy. I was there as their supervisor to help them get through the academy. And while I was at the FBI Academy, I was then promoted to a headquarters supervisor in Washington, D.C., where I spent 2 years. And after that, uh, the policy at the time for the FBI, because I was now a grade 14 supervisor, and I was at headquarters. When we call them a desk, when a squad came open, you could put your name in to go to that to get that assignment. So there was a desk that opened in Detroit, Michigan. And having been at Washington, D.C. for 2 years. It was never my goal to stay in Washington and stay at FBI headquarters. So I put my name in for the desk in Detroit, and I was selected. And I thought I was taking over one of the public corruption squads in Detroit. And at the end of my first week, my boss called me upstairs and said, "Good news, bad news. The good news is you're still a supervisor." And I said, "Well, what's the bad news?" He says, "You're taking over the brand new drug squad." In 1982, President Reagan assigned the FBI through laws, of course, through Congress, concurrent jurisdiction with the Drug Enforcement Administration. So the FBI was now working drug cases. And that was my job in Detroit for my first 7.5 years. And after 7.5 years, it was a lot of work, a lot of stress, a lot of pressure. And an opening came up and we called the Special Operations Group in Detroit. So I asked my boss, could I be considered to maybe slide over and do something else, if you will. So then I became the supervisor for the Special Operations Group. That is the group that they would probably be using here in Montana because it's surveillance, aircraft operations, um, the electronic, once you get a warrant signed where you can tap a telephone or whatever you're using electronically, the Operations Group does that. And it was a full-time undercover assignment. So during that time, I assisted other divisions. I would send some of my agents. I would go myself to help other divisions because we were not known. We had false identities. And then one of the things that I did not long before I retired, I was assigned one of the Special Operation Group teams down at the Atlanta Olympics in 1996. And if you remember Richard Jewell, the young man that was accused of maybe being the bomber during the Atlanta Olympics, I was the very first FBI agent to interview him. I also was a EVOC instructor down at the FBI Academy, but I was not assigned there full time. I would go back there 3, 4 times a year because I did have a driving background, and I would teach new agents or people, even executives, or not executives, executive drivers for GM, Ford Motor Company, because I'm out of, living in Detroit. We would take people down there to the academy to teach them how to drive fast but safely. So that was at the FBI, what we call the driving school. I retired in 1988, started my own private security / private investigator company. I was working for some attorneys there. I did some contract work for Ford Motor Company in Dearborn. And in 2001, I was called up by people I knew at Ford, and they asked me to come in for an interview. They were restructuring the entire Ford security department. So I got hired by Ford Motor Company in Dearborn, and I was in charge of security for Ford World headquarters. They call it the Glass House there in Dearborn. But my other bigger job was manager for global investigations. Ford Motor Company has plants, as you can well imagine, all over the world. And with the advent of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, where that was after some of the cases where some of these CEOs were literally causing companies to go bankrupt because they weren't reporting losses, thefts, so on and so forth. So the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, I was working with the legal division, compliance, and I set up a worldwide reporting system around the globe where Ford Motor Company had plants or employees. I set up what I called 4 regional investigation coordinators: South America, North America, Europe, and Asia, which kind of covered everything. And those four people reported to me everything that went on within their area of, the area that they were responsible for. And then once a month, I had to prepare a report that went up to the executives. It was reviewed. And then every quarter, um, the Ford Motor Company CEO, whoever it was at that time, they had to sign off on it. And it went to the board of directors. So I did that for almost 13 years. And I really and truly have been trying to move to Montana my whole life, and I finally made it. Just took me a while.